I love the fact that the God of the Bible is a God who speaks. He shows us a ton of different ways in the Bible of how he speaks. And today I'm just going to share one quick way. But if you'd like to learn about 5 ways that he speaks, I'm going to click to another video at the end of this one, and I'm going to encourage you to check it out. I share a Bible story, a personal story, as well as a prayer and meditation regarding different ways that God speaks. Okay, so for a short 7-minute story about one of the ways that God speaks. One of the ways that he speaks is through dreams. Job 33:14-17 tells us, God may speak in a dream or a vision of the night. When deep sleep falls upon men, he opens up their ears and seals his instruction in order to conceal pride from man and turn him from his deed. Pretty amazing. I could speak about what that says for a long time, and I do when I teach on biblical dream interpretation and workshops that I teach. But for now, I'll just say this. I'm grateful that God speaks in dreams, and it's one of the ways that he's actually led me quite a bit in my life. So in another video, pardon me, I have a cold. In another video, I shared about how God led me to go into full-time ministry in 2004. I didn't share about a very particular dream that he reminded me of in the middle of all his speaking to let me know that I was really hearing from him. To give you just a little bit of background, I was working in the corporate world at the time. I didn't necessarily love my job, but I definitely was attached to the paycheck that I had. I lived in Denver, Colorado, a city that I absolutely love to this day. And where I felt like he was calling me was Los Angeles, California. And I did not want to move there at all. But he spoke in a lot of different ways. And he kept confirming it through prophetic words, through the scripture, through people praying for me and giving me prophetic words. There were a lot of different ways that he spoke. And one day, because I was just really struggling with it, like I knew that he was speaking, but I really still didn't want it to be true. I just asked him for a confirmation, and he said, go get your dream journal. And so I went and I got my dream journal, and I didn't know what I was looking for. But I opened up the dream journal, and it opened up to exactly the dream that as soon as I saw it, I knew it was a dream that God wanted to remind me of. And so it's really interesting because this dream I had remembered for a couple of years. It was a very significant one. And I'm going to share with you how I remembered it, but then I'm going to share with you how I wrote it in my journal. So the way that I'd remembered it for 2 years is that I had driven my car to the beach, and I had looked out over the ocean. There were other people there on the beach with me. I didn't know them, but I knew that they were there. I looked out into the ocean, and I saw this huge SeaWorld park in the middle of the ocean. And I knew that all of us on the beach were waiting for something like really important to happen. And sure enough, all of a sudden, 2 huge whales jumped up out of this SeaWorld park and made a huge splash in the ocean. And I was expecting that they were going to swim, but they didn't. Instead, they went into this holding tank, and they kind of went up like a little ski ramp sort of thing and came back down. And then I heard a voice in the dream say, the gates have yet to be released. One detail I didn't say is that the SeaWorld Park was huge. It wasn't like a normal SeaWorld Park. There were like around 80,000 people. I didn't have an exact number, but if I had to guess, that's about how big the park was. So I knew that there were not just people on the beach who were excited and waiting, but people in the actual park excited and waiting. And so, I'd had this dream interpreted, and it was in one of the first biblical dream interpretation workshops I'd ever attended. And the guy who interpreted it said, Janine, you're going to be a part of 2 huge moves of God. You're going to see the world as you're a part of these moves. And it's not time yet. The gates have not yet to be released. And then he gave a prophetic word, because that was basically the interpretation of the dream. But he goes, but I want to encourage you that this is a dream from God, and eventually you will see this happen. So as I said, I'd held on to this dream for a couple of weeks. I'd been asking God, okay, so what are the 2 huge moves? And there were things that I'd had in questions before him. But on this particular day, when he sent me to my journal to, look up this dream, I was astounded, because when I opened up the journal, the very first line was, I drove my car to the beach in California. I had completely forgotten that detail. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, yet another confirmation that I'm supposed to go and work for this ministry in Los Angeles. And, it just didn't change my heart in the sense of I still wasn't ready to go, but it did change my heart in the sense of, like being more open to what God was speaking and asking him to soften my heart towards what it was that he had for me. And so, as I said, this is not the only confirmation that I had in terms of working for this ministry. There were a lot of different ways that God spoke, but I am really grateful. Number one, that God speaks in dreams. Number two, that when you study the dreams and you study the visions in scripture, it's very clear that God speaks in symbols and metaphors. We see this in the parables also too in the New Testament. And that there is such a thing as biblical dream interpretation. Joseph, when he interprets the dreams for the butler and the baker, he says, "Hey, do not all interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." And then we also see Daniel interpreting, dreams for Nebuchadnezzar. And what's interesting about that is, like God sets up both Joseph and Nebuchadnezzar, if you don't know those stories, to eventually like have really powerful positions as a result of the accurate interpretation of dreams. And we also say dreams like being super, super important in the life of Jesus. And so in terms of safeguarding his life, and read the whole first part of Matthew, and you'll see some of the direction that was given to safeguard his life. It's amazing. So dreams are just one of the ways that God speaks. It happens to be a significant way that God speaks to me, but it's not the only way. And so again, I want to encourage you, check out the video that I'm going to link to at the end of this one. It's called 5 Ways that God Speaks to and Encounters His People. And next week, I'm going to be actually posting another video about 5 more ways that God speaks to and encounters His people. I hope you're encouraged. Mostly I do these videos because I want to help you. I want to just inspire you or encourage you. That might be the better way to say it. To seek God, to ask Him to help you to know Him better. In this particular video, I'm encouraging you to open up your heart to hear Him in all the different ways that He speaks, and very particularly in dreams. So I hope you're encouraged. God bless.